Is it possible for Donald Trump to jump the shark? Well, Ben Mankiewicz and I have speculated on an episode of Old School, that's another podcast we have, that the only thing he can say that might cause him any kind of trouble, because he's already said everything and it hasn't caused him any trouble, is if he said something weird and incredibly, racist, anti-Semitic, like, my Jew lawyer tells me, right? And you'd be like, oh my God, he did it, that's too much, right? Well, he didn't do that, but he came really close. Now, he's talking at the Republican Jewish Coalition, and listen to what he says. He says, I think you, as business people, will feel good about this and respect it. Now, wait a minute. How do you know they're business people? It's the Republican Jewish Coalition, but maybe they're dentists, maybe they're working construction. I don't know. Like, okay, you say they're Republicans. Maybe they're more likely to be business people, and hey, maybe he's not saying anything that's stereotypes against Jews. Okay, hold, because we're definitely going to get there. So here's what he follows up with. I'm a negotiator, like you folks. Wait a minute, why are they negotiators? Why are you assuming they're negotiators? Because they're Jews. This guy's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, more. He says, and maybe better than any audience, the people in this room understand what I'm saying. But why? Why? So now he's literally saying, because you, this audience, the Republican Jewish Coalition, because you're Jews, you know what I'm talking about in negotiations, right? I mean, these are the oldest stereotypes in the world. And by the way, they led to very, very ugly things. So they're not trifling matters. It's only funny because of how over the top and ridiculous it is, right? So he continues, some of us renegotiate deals. Is there anybody that doesn't renegotiate deals in this room? Perhaps more than any room I've ever spoken to. Oh, for God's sake. Oh, for God's sake, man. How's that not anti-Semitic? How is that not at the least a wild, horrible stereotype about Jews? And he has no conscience. He doesn't know. He doesn't realize that he's saying things that are deeply offensive, totally stereotypical. He's like, you Jews, you like to renegotiate everything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, unfortunately, I do know what you're saying. He said, and Talking Points memo says about the whole encounter, the attendees were, quote, this is what Trump said, quote, not going to support me even though you know I am the best thing that could ever happen to Israel. Now, wait a minute. Why aren't they going to support you? Maybe because you're anti-Semitic. But anyway, no. He says, quote, I know why you're not going to support me, because I don't want your money. Oh, God. Dude, don't say that. That's terrible. Like, it went from ridiculous to, like, really dark. I know what his shtick is, right? I'm not beholden to donors. God bless. That's the one slightly positive thing about this guy. But you can't go to a room full of Jewish Americans and say, you negotiators, you business people, you're constantly renegotiating stuff. I know how you Jews are. Well, I don't care about your money because I know you guys care. Don't say that. That's terrible. That's terrible. Okay? And then, of course, because he's wildly hypocritical, right? And maybe that's why people like him. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He says this, then he says that. Then he says, no, but don't get me wrong. I love Israel. He says, quote, Israel's given a lot. And a lot of people don't know that. I think the public relations for Israel hasn't been so great. Israel's given a lot, but hasn't been given a lot of credit for what they've given. Okay, all right, well, I don't know to what degree that's true, but now we're veering into policy, and okay, that's his views on that. And according to people like Gary Bauer, who's very conservative, who was in the room, he said he started to regain the crowd. And then they lost him again when he got into policy they didn't agree with. He said that there was, quote, one side in particular that was to blame for not having a negotiated peace deal. And now, whenever a Republican says that, of course they're talking about the Palestinians. Now, in this case, he meant the Israelis. Whoa! Now, the reality is there's a lot of room to blame on both sides here. And it's not like Donald Trump is afraid to blame Muslims. He says the most horrific things about Muslims. And again, today he came out and said all Muslims should be banned from the country, period, from the U.S. So he's got no love for Muslims. But he says a lot will have to do with Israel, again referring to peace. A lot will have to do with Israel and whether or not Israel wants to make the deal, whether or not Israel's willingness to sacrifice certain things. They may not be, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that, but then you're just not going to have a deal. Okay. Look, raw honesty doesn't mean he's telling the truth, okay? So the anti-Semitic stuff is his honest interpretation of his bias, right? He does feel those things about Jews, and that's dangerous, right? And that's horrible, but he's inadvertently being honest about that. And he says, look, if you want a peace deal, you negotiate and you give up certain things, and you're not giving up anything. Now, that part is his honest opinion and the opinion of many others, but not one that is tolerated in the Republican Party. What's amazing is the anti-Semitic comments got almost no press. I had to go to progressive blogs to find that stuff. But his policy positions on Israel, which have some validity, right? I don't think one side is to blame. I think both sides are to blame. And he's saying, hey, look, you guys aren't giving up anything. If you care about Israel and you want a peace deal, you got to give something up. That part is slightly logical. That part, everybody's like, oh my God, he might have done himself in among Republicans. That is a policy position that is not allowed in the Republican Party. He even said, I don't know that Israel has the commitment to make it in terms of a peace deal. But mind you, he also said he doesn't care if they don't make it. He's like, I'm okay with it. You want to have an occupation forever? Fine, I don't care. He's like, I'm just telling you that if you want a peace deal, you got to give up something. Finally, the Atlantic writes, Trump was actually booed by the crowd when he refused to clarify his position on Jerusalem as Israel's capital, which is Israel's policy and another common talking point among Republicans. Well, there, he's being a politician that is rare. Now, most politicians will lie during their campaign, Republican or Democrat, and they will tell the crowd whatever they want to hear. So they'll say, oh, yes, of course, in this case, Jerusalem will be your capital. And then they'll become president, again, Republican or Democrat, and they'll say, yeah, we didn't really mean it, because otherwise there's no peace deal, because in any reasonable peace deal, you have to split Jerusalem. So they almost all lie during the campaign, and in this case, he refuses to lie in that particular instance. So there you have, in this toxic brew of a speech that Trump had, all the upsides and downsides of Trump. And what's amazing is his somewhat accidental, tiny bit reasonable position on Israel's negotiating stance is the thing that's causing him trouble, as opposed to the obviously horrible stereotypes that he used about Jews in the early part of the speech, which is what he should be causing him trouble. It's a topsy-turvy world we live in. Makes no sense, man. But any way you slice it, understand what this guy's about. And part of his appeal is he spews that stuff out, right? Right or wrong, and it's certainly not true in an overwhelming majority of the cases. But as one Republican put it, it isn't true, but it feels true, right? And if this feels true to the Republicans about, hey, the Jews are negotiators and they'll renegotiate, meaning they'll screw you over on a deal, right? But understand what he's saying. If that feels true to a lot of Republicans, that's dangerous, man. And that's the dangerous part of this guy. Get real about it. This is who he is. Young Turks.